Hi, my name's J.R. Weed. I'm 21 years old. I'm from Elmira, New York. Um, so I guess I would start my story. I had a pretty normal life. I grew up in West Elmira, a very nice neighborhood. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a cop. I had a very good upbringing, um, very normal lifestyle. I guess what really started my path of questioning who I was my my path for my own identity, and I guess I'd always wanted to understand what made me who I am and how I could inspire or change anybody that I came into contact with. And the start of that, I was always the kid who was acting out in school, and I thought, maybe that was what made me cool. I tried a lot of different things as far as trying to be popular, wanting approval from my peers and things like that. So, growing up through school, I always was involved in sports and always trying to do the next best thing. Um, I was involved in church, and I was, you know, I was relatively involved, and that's kind of where my story really started. Is I was involved in a youth camp. I would go every year from the ages of maybe 10 until 16, and I had a really spiritual experience there. It kind of changed my life, and I thought, I'm gonna be the ideal young man and live a life of God and things like that. And then I got caught up in this life of question of whether that was what actually made me who I am or not. So later on in school, I got introduced to smoking weed and drinking with my friends, and I kind of took that road for a while, and that obviously strayed me from my path of like wanting to be a spiritual and like live into my higher self. So the next year that I went to this camp, I was 14 or 15 years old, and after the year previously, I kind of thought that I had given my life to God. I started using opiates. I started doing prescription pills because somebody there had brought them, and that was really where my like path started. And I discovered this new interest of mine of drug use. And as the years went on, I started getting involved in the wrong crowd, and um, I had many relationships that were based on ill intentions. Um, my drug use had progressed, and I started taking a lot of prescription drugs. I started selling drugs, smoking weed. Um, and my senior year in high school, I thought that I had got somebody pregnant, so I decided to kind of take that time to try to put my life together as best I could. Um, so I was with this girl for the months of her pregnancy, and I had tried to get sober and clean my life up, and I wasn't very successful at it. So it took me a couple months to kind of get my feet underneath me, and then after the baby was born, I realized that it wasn't mine, um, and this was after I had brought it home to my family. I named it. I was in the delivery room, cut the umbilical cord. So after that experience, I had really dove even deeper into opiate abuse and things like that than I ever had before. And I started to realize that I had a pretty serious addiction. Um, I would get withdrawals after a couple hours of not having any pills to do or anything like that. So that was really when my addiction started to control my life. Um, and in AA or NA, they say like you would become powerless over your addiction, and that's what realized you needed help. And I think that when I realized that I was powerless over my addiction is when I understood that I needed help, but it took me a long time to actually seek that help. So, um, after that, I had the baby. The baby experience happened in October. I had gone throughout the winter months, getting deeper and deeper into using. In April, I talked to my parents, and I wanted to get clean, so I got involved in a recovery program. I was not successful in it. I had just got a new job with a construction company, so a lot of people that I worked with were involved in drug use, and that escalated things even further in my own life and my own use. So about a year into that job, I got introduced to heroin for the first time. And everything really started to spiral out of control even further than I ever thought they really could have. I had lost my job. I lost everybody that I had. My relationships with my family was quickly deteriorating. And I took a path that I never really thought I would, you know. My dad was a narcotics investigator for the police force, and I had always heard him talk about these drug busts and drug dealers and users that he's arrested, and I never thought I would become one of those people. And as an 18, 19-year-old man, I realized that I was one of those people. So I think the sense of disappointment that I held on myself, as well as the actions that I was choosing for myself, caused me to have a lot of mixed emotions of my identity. So in order to kind of cope with some of those feelings of this loss of self, I just continued to use heroin. I had a lot of very promiscuous relationships with, you know, different people. I started committing small crimes, and just really was lost. I had gone through the next couple of years trying to get sober again, using Suboxone to kind of cope with some of the withdrawals that I was having because it was really severe. You know, if I didn't have drugs for 3 or 4 hours, I was in bed and sick, and I couldn't really function a normal life. And I guess I didn't understand at that time, you know, like the severity of the choices that I was making for myself and how it affected me physically. So I would say the later part of my 19th year, so what was that, like 2016, I had met my good friend, Kevin, and he had always, I met him in high school, and we were friends in high school, and we would smoke weed together and things like that, but he was very involved in fitness and lifting, and I found like a safe haven in that, and I always wanted to do that. So we took this trip, and I told him, we took a trip to the Adirondacks, and we went on this long hike, and we got to the top of this mountain, and we were overlooking this beautiful scene, but it was a really foggy day, and we couldn't see anything, and it was just kind of ironic how it worked out. But I just had this moment where I realized, like, this is not who I am. And I told him, I said, you know, I really want to take a while in my life to, like, put some energy into me and put some energy into things that matter, because I wanted to get sober, not only for myself, but for the sake of the people around me. I could tell that I was going down a really bad path. So I had about 6 months of clean time after that, and I started using Suboxone again. I started using Xanax and Adderall, and that really just kick-started me using heroin again. I got into a really ugly relationship with a girl that also used, and that led me to about a year ago when I stopped working. I stopped having a relationship with my family. I was living from house to house, doing different things. really, I mean, living on the street, living out of my car, doing whatever I could to get my next fix. Um, so I decided in January of 2018 to go away to rehab. So I went to a 30-day program, and I ended up leaving after 15 days. But I knew that like I had to do something about my life, or I was gonna lose the opportunity to live. And after rehab, after I had left rehab, I I still kept in touch with some of the people that I was involved with there. And after about 2 weeks of being on the street, I had started using heroin again. I started using Xanax. I had committed an armed robbery, and I crashed my car. I totaled my dad's four-wheeler, and I kind of realized, like this was an eye-opening experience, not only for me, but for my family. And it came to the point where I was either going to lose my own life or lose my family if I didn't really do something about it. So I went back to rehab again for the second time. After 3 weeks of being there, they had discharged me successfully, and I went on to live my life, but I didn't have the actual skills that it took to maintain a sober lifestyle. I started working out more frequently. I mean, I was very committed as far as that goes, but as far as my spiritual and mental health, my ideas of what a sober lifestyle didn't align with where my head and where my spirit was at. And in turn, I felt like I got lost in my journey to sobriety. So around my birthday of this year, I started hanging out with the girl that I had my last relationship with, and we started using heroin again together. And I had just got a check for $5,000, and I took every penny that I had, and I bought drugs with it. And luckily for a couple weeks, I was able to stay alive while I was destroying myself. And on April 29th of 2018, I had gone and got some heroin, and I went back to this girl's house, and I got high really quick, and little known to me, I ended up dying that night. The paramedics came in and they Narcaned me. And then I ended up having to be taken to the hospital to be seen after that. But it was a funny story how it all worked out, because my now boss, my employer, he had made a plan with me to have breakfast the same day that happened. And a week after that, he was going on this trip to New Jersey to see a motivational speaker, and it was a fitness conference. And I think I was kind of just seeking an opportunity to have like some sort of divine intervention, and I didn't know it at the time, but that was my opportunity. So I took the opportunity to leave everything I knew behind with this strange man that I had met once, but I knew his story. I read his book when I was in rehab about him being incarcerated and some of the struggles that he had faced, and his own upbringing and things like that. So I felt like I had some sort of moment, like an aha moment, or a moment where there was some divine purpose to like what all had happened. So he invited me to go on this trip with him, and I remember, at that time I was lost, but I knew that there was a piece of me inside me that could never be touched, that I always knew who I was. So throughout this trip, I had a lot of experiences where I felt like there were people of God that really touched my life. One being Travis, my boss, and then Scott and Lisa Lowmaster, the pastors that had went with us. And they really spoke to me, and as well as just the experience of realizing that there's really great people in the world, and doing great things, and being great as a person is only something that you can fulfill yourself. So later on in the trip, Travis had offered me a job to become a personal trainer at his gym, and I knew I had loved fitness, and it was a lot of something that kept me sober. It kept my mind right. So I jumped on the opportunity, and now I live a life where every day I get to impact somebody or motivate somebody, whether it's just with their struggle in weight loss, or maybe it's my mom. She's a member at the gym that I go to, and I know that Travis has not only helped her in her journey in fitness, but her journey in combating some of the feelings that she has of her son being an addict. And there's people like that all over, where their journey isn't just how much weight they can lose, or being the best version of themselves physically, but also how they battle a lot of the external struggles outside of those doors. And I think that's one of the most important things about understanding who I am, is that I have a purpose that's greater than just being a personal trainer, and all the experiences that I've had in my life tie into way more than just me being able to survive, but me being able to help other people change their lives every single day. And it's really a beautiful gift that I've been given, to have a second chance at life. And I guess that's it.